Hey, what's happening everybody? Jamie Fenn here. Today, I'm super excited to show you guys this brand new teleport superpower effect in Davinci Resolve Fusion. Now, this teleport effect is actually inspired by a popular Netflix series called Umbrella Academy. Now, I personally don't watch the series, but I did get a message on Instagram from one of my subscribers, so thank you so much for the inspiration. And if any of you guys have any topics or any filmmaking things that you want me to cover on this channel, feel free to hit me up with a DM and I'll see if I can make it happen. And by the way, a bunch of you guys watch my videos, but you don't subscribe, so please do me a favor and hit subscribe if you have not already, and give it a thumbs up if you find this video helpful and you want to see more. All right, so with that said, let's open up Davinci Resolve and get started. If you don't have footage, you will be able to download the footage that I'm going to use in the example right now, linked in the description. So feel free to download that and follow along. Okay, now the second step is if you have not installed Fusion Reactor, there's a video linked right above. Go ahead and click on that, watch that video, install it, then you'll be ready for the tutorial. Once you've installed Fusion Reactor, you actually want to come up to where it says Workspace at the top, come down to Scripts, Reactor, open Reactor. Then once you've opened Reactor, you want to type in heat and you'll see heat distortion. Go ahead and click on that and install it. Okay, so with these two clips, I did the same movement in each shot. And if you try to film your own, you should try to replicate the exact speed and movement that you do, so your teleport effect will look seamless. So let's go ahead and match these up first, because that's the first step. I'm going to go ahead and take our first clip here and go right up until the point. Here, let me make this window a little bit bigger so we can see everything that we're doing. We want to go right up to the point of where I basically kind of swing my arms. And then we want to get our second clip and bring that on top and find in this clip where I swing my arms as well. And I'm going to go right to where I fully extend and bring it up to that point and drag that on top of our clip that we have underneath. I'm going to use the arrow keys and go right to the point of where I swing my arms and just kind of match these up. Now, what really helps in this step is if you click on the upper clip and come up to the inspector and turn down the opacity, you can kind of match up the movement and see the previous clip. So if you need to do any resizing by any means, go ahead and do so. I did a little bit for this clip. This was the original size of the clip underneath, but I zoomed it up. It was shot in 4K, so if you have the flexibility to shoot in 4K, great, because you may have to do some adjustments as you may not line up in both clips. So go ahead and make those adjustments if you need to, and just kind of make sure that these line up as best as possible. Now I'm going to turn the opacity back up. So now we have clip A going into clip B, and it already looks pretty seamless. It's basically a match move transition at this point. Okay, so the next thing I like to do is actually just drag the clips so they are the same length, just because it's personal preference. You don't have to, but this way it kind of gives you a little bit of freedom. So once you go into Fusion, if you want to do some blending, or you may want to do some different effects, you'll have some clip to work with instead of just having exactly what you need. So once you've matched up your clips, go ahead and highlight both of them, right click and select New Fusion Clip. All right, make sure the playhead is over that Fusion clip and click on Fusion. All right, so before we get started, let's just make sure that we have our proper clips where we need them to be. So our first clip needs to be on the foreground. So this is our first clip here, and it is on the background. So we got to make sure it's on the foreground. And then also attach our second clip to the background. I'm going to rename these just first and second. Then another thing I want to do real quick just to keep things organized is right click here and come down to Arrange Tools to Grid. That way when we move our nodes, they look all pretty. All right. So with our first clip here, we need to figure out a way to transition into the second one smoothly. And what I noticed that they did in Umbrella Academy, they just had a simple, it looked like they used like a simple ellipse shape. So we're going to go ahead and use that. So let's go ahead and click on our first clip like this and select ellipse. Also, you want to make sure that you have your media out selected in our main viewer window. So go ahead and drag this node to that window. So once you've added the ellipse, we want to select invert, and we want to adjust down the width all the way and the height all the way. I'm going to use the arrow keys and just go forward until I basically want to start the transition from the first clip to the second clip. So let's go ahead and go right to the point of where you do your motion. In this case, I'm just swinging my arms. I'm going to keyframe these at 0. I'm going to move a few frames forward right to about there where I swing my arms back. And I want to keyframe this and make this way bigger than the actual frame. So make sure it goes outside of the whole clip. And as you can see now, we have something that looks like this, but we want to smooth this out. So let's go ahead and turn on soft edge and really crank this thing up all the way. So now we have something that looks like this. So I actually want that to be a little bit faster. It's too many frames. So what we can do is we can come up to the spline, select ellipse, and turn off the width and just adjust the height. And we can click on this first little keyframe and actually just bring it back to right about there. And I'm going to do the same thing for the height. I'm going to turn off the height, bring this back to about right there. I'm also going to fade this, and I want them to line up right about like that. There, a little bit better. And if you want, you can push plus or minus on your keys and see if these line up and make the little adjustments. It doesn't have to be perfect. For this example, I'm not going to make it perfect, but if you want to, you can come in here and smooth them out. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is add heat distortion, and that's why I had you install it in the very beginning of this tutorial. So let's go ahead and click anywhere down here, hold down Shift and press spacebar, type in heat, select heat distortion, drag that node and hold down Shift. As you drag it here, you'll see the line turn colors. That means it's going to drag and automatically connect these two nodes. Drag it there. All right, the next thing we want to do is add an ellipse right to that. So if you have heat distortion selected and select ellipse, it will automatically connect. And we want to adjust the heat distortion. I'm not going to go through all the settings of it. You guys can adjust it however you like, but I'm going to turn down the heat blur size, turn up the distortion, maybe turn down the spread, then come over to the next tab and just kind of play with these depending on the look I'm kind of going for. And I want it to be small kind of distortion just at first because it's just going to go over my hands. On the third one, maybe make something like this. So I'm going to select the ellipse tool and I'm going to turn down the width and the height all the way because we're going to keyframe that. I'm going to go a few frames before I swing my arms. I'm going to keyframe. So these are at 0. It's still at 0. Then I'm going to keyframe again at 0. And then I'm going to go up to the point where I cross my arms going through the portal. And I'm going to turn up the width to right about outside of my elbows. And then I'm going to turn this up the same amount. So it's just the same. You can maybe even do a little bit more narrow. Depends how you like the effect. Another thing I want to do is turn up the soft edge. That way it just blends it a little bit. So now we have this effect of some portal stuff happening, and then it transitions into the next shot. So again, what we want to do is add heat distortion. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is add a little bit of more of a portal feeling to it, kind of like a warpy background. So in order to do that, we need to add something called a dent. So let's just click right here, hold down Shift and press spacebar, type in dent. I selected the DNT. You can select this one too. It really doesn't matter. You can select either of those. Basically kind of figure out what works best for you. Also, this may be something from Reactor. I'm not sure. It's hard to keep track of all the plugins, but either of the dents will work. Drag it down. Let's connect it in here. Now we have something that looks like this, but you can adjust the dent and make it look awesome and do all kinds of crazy stuff and kind of play with it. And you see where I'm going with this, right? In order to get this dent effect without affecting you, you have to create a mask. So let's go ahead and just turn the blend all the way up so there's no effect of the dent on the video yet. Let's select the polygon node and that will automatically attach to the dent. And so what I did roughly in the video, and you can do it roughly as well, or you can be as precise as you like, depending on how much time you want to spend. Let's just go ahead and click on the inside of my body. And it doesn't have to be precise because we can do some little fine-tune adjustments once we've created this mask. And we're essentially masking out the subject just so the warpiness doesn't affect it. This is actually where you're going to have to spend some time because you're going to have to go one frame at a time adjusting the mask roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but for certain movements like my knee coming out like this, I'm going to adjust it. And you're going to want to do this until you go all the way through the portal. So I'm going to do that now and fast forward to that point. Okay, so now we're at the point where I've roughly basically masked myself out. So now once we've done that, we can play with our Dent settings. So let's go ahead and go to the point where I go through the portal. So right about here. And we want to have a little bit of like a kind of like a suction behind me. So in order to do that, we want to come up here to the Dent and make it about this big. And then we can turn up the strength. You also have to make sure that you turn the blend all the way down because we did turn it all the way up. That means it had no effect. And so we want to get to the point where we are basically transitioning and we want to turn the strength down just a little bit so it creates like a suction behind you. That's kind of like what the original clip looked like. Also, since this looks really rough and you can see the distortion of the dent, we can click on our polygon node and bring up the soft edge a little bit and also increase the border width. That way it doesn't have too much of an effect on the clip, and depending on how your mask is, you will have to adjust these to your liking. So let's go ahead and adjust the strength of the dent and also the blend. So I'm just going to kind of mess with the strength just so I can see the full effect of it. And I want to keyframe the amount of the dent first. So I'm going to go a few frames before I actually go through the portal. I'm going to keyframe the blend all the way up. And then when I want the effect of the portal to start, I'm going to select the keyframe again and go to the point of where I want the full effect to be, which will be right about here. Okay, so now we have something that looks like this. But I do want to make the size a little bit smaller. And I do want to play with the polygon settings just because I think it could look a little bit tighter like that. So let's go back to the dent and look at our blend. Great. And now we can adjust the strength and the size, but we're going to keyframe them as well. I also selected black hole up here. You guys can select type 1, type 2, type 3, whatever works. Honestly, they all look pretty awesome. They all have different characteristics, but for the most part, you kind of want to just play with it and see what is best for you. So first, I'm going to keyframe the size. So I'm going to start with the size all the way down, and I'm going to, just a few steps before I go through the portal, and keyframe it all the way down so it's nothing, and then go to the point of the maximum amount of power, essentially. So it happens to be like that. So now we have something that looks like this. And I also wanted to go full blast around the whole frame just for a few frames. So as I transfer to about here, I may turn up the size all the way. That looks a bit extreme, so maybe I'll turn on cosine, sine, type 1, strength, maybe not make it so crazy, you know? If you adjust the strength too high, you'll see yourself. You don't want to have that effect. And then come back through the portal, and I'm going to turn the size down like this. So now I have something that looks a little bit like we're teleporting through to a different location. And it's all about the warpiness and how you guys want to keyframe this. It's all up to you. I may turn off that last keyframe, go a few steps forward as I bring my hands through, and turn the size down to right about there. Maybe also adjust the strength down. And then also, I may want to adjust the soft edge here. And when I say adjust, I mean basically kind of keyframe what I like, because now it looks like the suction of that portal is kind of going through to me. And so right about here, I may keyframe the soft edge and the border width and turn it down a little bit, maybe bring the border width up. Now it is going to be slow as playback, so you may have to jump between your Fusion tab and your Edit tab and let it render. That's what I have to do. But for the most part, you kind of see what's coming together. And again, I'm going to probably keyframe the lines here. I didn't do the greatest job, but for this example, I just wanted to show you guys. And so, yeah, make it look as best as you can. The cleaner the angles, and, also make sure that the person underneath or the subject underneath doesn't show through at any time, because it will somewhat look a little fake. Another thing I want to do is adjust the level of the polygon node that we have that is on the Dent node. So this is at 100% full strength. I'm going to come through a few frames like this and just turn it all the way down. So now we have something that looks a little cleaner, a little tighter like that. All right, so the next thing we want to do is add some more heat distortion. So let's go ahead and click in the node area, hold down Shift and press spacebar and type in heat distortion. Go ahead and hold down Shift as you drag heat distortion on top of this line, and it will go over the entire clip the entire time. So let's go ahead and come up here to our last icon in our inspector and turn down the blend mode all the way. I'm at the very beginning of the whole clip. Let's keyframe that so it stays at 0. And let's go to the point of where we want this heat distortion to show on the entire clip, which is right about here, right before I flex my arms to go through the portal. I'm going to click that keyframe button again, and I want the max strength of that to be right about here. It could be actually in the middle as well. I want it to be as it's transferring into the second clip. Something that I don't like about the heat distortion specifically for this transition is that the heat blur size by default is at 10. You want to turn that down unless that's the look you're going for, and you want to basically keep that as clean as possible. If you have the heat blur size up all the way, it kind of gives it like a blur filter-ish kind of look, which I don't like. On the distortion controls for the first half, we also want to turn this up and turn the spread down. And these are all personal preferences. You guys can do whatever you like. The third icon up here is where you really start to get the effect. You can turn up the scale of that, turn it down. You can also turn down the seethe rate so it doesn't like go crazy heat distorty. You can just make it look a little warpy. You don't have to go too heavy with it. So now I'm just going to keep playing with the contrast of this third icon up here, maybe turn up the detail a little bit. Also, if you want to get some really crazy effects like this, you can turn it up all the way. You can kind of do whatever you like. I like to kind of keep the warpiness a little bit bigger. If I turn it up all the way, you can see these little shapes that it creates. I don't want that personally. It does kind of look cool, but just for this example, I'm going to keep this turned down to, I don't know, let's say 2.52. And yeah, so now that's going over the whole clip like that. And so something that I want to also keep in mind is I don't necessarily want that heat distortion effect to be on me. So what's great about what we did with our polygon node for our masks, oh man, look at that mask. It's lovely, isn't it? What's great about this is that we can just take the work that we did and just put it on top of our heat distortion like that. So now the distortion doesn't go on top of me. It will just go where you want it to go. And that's everything that you basically masked out. Also, the last thing we want to do is make sure that you turn down the blend mode of the distortion when you want the effect to be completely done. So for my example, I'm going to jump to the keyframe where it's at max effect. I'm going to go through the portal. I'm just going step by step, going with my arrow keys. And as I take maybe my first step, I want to turn it all the way down. And now we've teleported into our second clip. And if I go to the edit tab and let it render out, now this is obviously just a rough version of what could be done. Obviously the masking here could be way tighter, but for time purposes and this tutorial, this is the main idea. And just most importantly, obviously what you just saw in the example is make sure the mask is as tight as you can get it. And just keep it even around your body, in or outside of it. That way you can make some fine-tune adjustments. And also play with the dent. Play with different types of dents. Play with the black hole. You can play with the cosine. I don't know. I think that's how you say it. These are all great different types of dense, and it's a great way to blend the two together. Check out this playlist right here. There's a ton of awesome visual effects that I've created, and hopefully you guys will enjoy those as well. So until next time, I will see you guys in my next video.